Hi, this is Rock, and we're going to take a basic survey of all the icons that we have in the customized ribbon. The reason these icons made it to this ribbon is that they're the best of the best. So the most used ones from File I've got here, and the most used ones from Home in this Home ribbon, all the best ones, I've put here in this Home group. And all the best ones from Insert you'll see here. So, and so forth for formulas, data, review, view, and developer. That way you don't have to go digging through all the ribbons. We can just find them all here in the one customized ribbon. But since these are the tools of your trade, let's take a close look and see what they do. Obviously, save as, that seems pretty intuitive. Open if you want to open up another Excel file. Excel options, we're familiar with this dialog box and all the settings that I've encouraged you to go look at every few weeks as you get to know Excel and see which ones you want to optimize for your own use. Properties is a quick way to see how large your file is and other things about your file. Send, we've got a few options here for sending files back and forth. If you work in an organization that has a large number of people, usually it's best if you all agree on sending links to documents instead of sending the actual files, especially when you get into these large financial models that sometimes they can be large files that take up too much storage on your Exchange server or on your SharePoint. So it's best to send the links. Sometimes if you want to send a file that you don't want people to modify after you send it, you can send the email as a PDF. When you send an email as a PDF, it essentially prints it, not to a printer, but to the computer, which means that it generally can't be modified. If you're going to do that, you'll want to make sure that you have used the page layout ribbon to identify how you want it to look when it gets printed. I don't use XPS attachment, and who uses faxes these days? Some people still do. Those are your options with send. Close. I'll talk with you about why I encourage the habit of using the close instead of the red X in the top right corner. And it has to do with Windows, when you open a new window. So I'll cover that when we get over to there. All right, this whole section here, almost all of it has to do with formatting. So we've got the font you can choose up here. And just a word to the wise about fonts. Fonts should not draw attention to themselves. So I would advise not using anything that is too attention-getting. Then you've got your font size here. And even though you've got choices here, know that you can type exactly what you want. Like if you wanted a font size 5, you can type that and hit tab, and that will be a very small font. Even though 5 was not an option on here, you can also do things like say, I want 10.5. So this gives you the choice of what you want, but you can also override that by typing in what you think you need. One of my favorite icons is this Format Painter icon. Let's illustrate its benefits. Let's say I have these three. I'm just going to illustrate this. We've got orange, we've got red, and we can have blue with white text. Okay, so I'm doing this to show you that I can then use the Format Painter to paint something else over here. So I can take this, click the Format Painter, click somewhere else, and it will do the same format here. This also works if you select whole rows. Format Paint also has a toggle on option where if I click this twice, it will now allow me to select anywhere I want to. And it will continue like that until I click it again. So I can select this, double click, and then anywhere I click, it's going to be doing that. So that's Format Painter. You can use it for columns. You can use it for rows as I illustrated, and you can use it on and off with that toggle to where you can click anywhere and it works. The next thing I want to show you is the borders. So I'm going to jump to a new sheet and let's talk about borders. This borders icon is a drop down and it gives you lots of different options: bottom, top, left, right, no border, all borders, outside borders, thick borders, etc. You've got all these options, but then you can also draw your own border type. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to select this and let's try more borders, where in here I can choose a border color and then I can choose, I'm going to make an outline there. There we go. But if I take this same thing and go back in, I can also give a different color for the inside. So more borders is what I usually use because it allows me to do all kinds of specific actions like choose the border format, thickness, and depending on how many cells you have selected, you may or may not have any inside cells to choose from. So if I select here that number of cells, I can come up to more borders, and now I have options for inside and out. There's the outside, and then I'll click on this thin one and do the inside, and maybe I want the inside to be like a lighter gray, so I'll take that and do the inside. There we go. One thing to note is that if I do an action like, let's say I do bottom border, and now I have a bottom border there. Next time I want to do that, I can just click the icon instead of using the drop down, because that was the last thing I did. If I do a left border for all these, and then I want to do that again, I can just click the icon, because see how this has turned into a left border icon? It uses what you did last and leverages that so that you don't have to do the drop down if you're going to continue to use the same selection. So that's borders. I've got text that doesn't fit into this cell. I can do a couple of things. One is I can double click the right border of this column. If I double click that, it will size the width to fit the text that I've got. But if I need that column to be less and I want this to wrap, then I can click on the cell, click wrap, and that's how that works. Wrap will auto size your row for you. If I came in here then and added more text, then it resizes the row so that it will always fit. One of the problems with wrap text is when you have a lot of text, then it automatically creates your row height to be super high, which in some cases, if you have multiples of these, then it starts to feel like you can't even see your data. It's kind of hidden. So a way to address this is to take off the wrap when you don't need it. So you can select the cell or the whole column and turn off that. Sometimes it doesn't change automatically, in which case you want to double click the bottom of this row heading, and it will resize for you. This one resized to fit because this has wrap text. This one does not have wrap text, so you see how it goes into the next column, which if I have more words over here in the next column, that will hide this here, which is part of why wrap text can be helpful. Text orientation has presets for angling in a particular direction, like that's 45 degrees up, 45 degrees down. We've got vertical text like that. I don't recommend using that. See if you can avoid that. Sometimes this to the side is helpful when you're trying to make column headers and they need to be thin. I use that a bit. The rotate text down. I'm not sure why you would use that unless you were trying to imitate a bookshelf or something. The next option you have is to jump to the Format Cells dialog box with alignment selected. So if you do this, you've got a dial here that you can just drag to the degrees, or you can type the degrees that you want. If you want to get back exactly to 0, it's probably best to just type 0 in here rather than trying to exactly get it there. So this text orientation is a part of the Format Cells alignment dialog box. These next cells have to do with color. So we've got font color, as we saw over here in the first sheet, where I changed the font color to white. So you see how white is my next selection. So I can just click on this icon to make that text white, or this text white. You can select multiples and then click, or you can use the format painter. If you do this drop down, you see your theme colors, the gradations by the themes that your organization has by default, and then standard colors. I usually use this more colors because it gives obviously more colors, but also in a standard way that makes it easy to choose the particular hue you're looking for. But then if you go into custom, this is very handy because you see RGB values and you see the hex. We'll go into this in a future video of how to use color and change colors and copy colors in a useful and consistent way using this custom colors. I get to this usually by using the more colors, because typically if I'm using colors, it's with the cell color, not so much the font color, although the two things work in the same way in terms of the layout and then the more colors options with the standard and the custom. So this more colors is for the fill colors. So if I open this, I'm going to be doing that for the fill, not for the font itself. To get to more colors for the font, I'll need to go up here and go to more colors for the font. Be careful about using font colors that are very similar to the fill colors. It makes it very unreadable. So keep good contrast there. I would say stay away from most colored fonts unless your background is white or if you're choosing a white font. So otherwise I would kind of keep this font black. The next several icons have to do with the positioning of text in the cell. So I'm going to get some data here. Let's just say we've got Alabama, Arkansas, Alaska. I realize this is not in alphabetical order. If we have California here, I'm going to make these cells taller to illustrate. This is currently set for bottom align. Top align looks like that. Middle align, and then bottom. But you also have the left to right. So here's left, which it already is by default. There's the middle, and there's the right. The thing to know about this is that you want to be consistent in your columns of data. So you can select the whole column and do the formatting all at once there, either to the left or to the right or to the middle of the cell. However you're going to do it, try to be consistent in your rows of data. The default for numbers is to the right, and the default for text is to the left. If you see any number that is aligned to the left, that should catch your eye because Excel treats numbers as numbers if they are formatted as numbers. If they're formatted as text, sometimes it doesn't know that it is supposed to be treated as a number. Like if I have text, and I can make it text by putting a single quote in front of it. If I have a text 2, and I'll say equals this equals 2, it says false. It doesn't even know that those are the same things. Whereas if I change this, if I take out that indicator to say this is text, and then I hit enter, then it's true because now it's treated as a 2. So watch the alignment of your text. These next ones for indent, increase and decrease indent. If I select these state capitals and do this indent, that might help me in my viewing of the data in that these are cities within those states. So it helps me visualize that those state capitals are not in the same category as these other elements of our data. Indentation can really help in working through hierarchies of your data. If I wanted to undo that, I could select these and use the decrease indent. So, or increase it more. Okay. Then this one called merge and center. Let's take this and let's click merge and center. That's what merge and center does. Now, if I want to copy this, I can't even select just the ones on the left because of this merge cell. It automatically selects that whole range instead of just the one on the left. For that reason and other reasons, I find it always regrettable to have merge cells in your data. So I highly recommend not merging and centering your cells. Just find some other way to do the same thing so that you can have the most flexibility possible as you work with your data. The reason I have this merge and center icon here is to unmerge the ones that I come across. Let's talk about decimal points. So I'm going to say 123.45678.9. Okay, so that gives me a number. You see how it doesn't show the 9 unless I double click here to automatically fit that number in there. This number, I can increase or decrease how many decimals this shows. So if I increase, it adds the 0 on the end. If I decrease, it hides and rounds up to that decimal point. So that is not to be confused with the idea that instead of 123.4, I'm going to do 1234.5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is not what these decimal movers do. It doesn't actually move the decimal point. It just moves how many spaces you show or hide behind the decimal point. So there's a difference with that. Then if I want to format using the comma style format, I use this a lot. Click there. This is a handy way to show as many commas as you need. Like if, for example, this has many digits in front of it, it will show all of the commas at the right places. You can also hide the decimals by clicking the decrease decimal, but by default, the comma style shows 2 decimal points. This is a very handy accounting format, puts a $sign there. So there are several kinds of currency formats. If I open up the Format Cells dialog box and I look at the number formatting, under currency and accounting, I have 2 different kinds. The currency format is a little different than the accounting format, and we'll go into that in another video, but I just want you to be aware that the accounting one puts that $sign to the left, whereas if I do currency and click OK, the $sign is right next to the number. I don't recommend that because if your font is small, it's kind of hard to see. So I recommend keeping those $signs over to the other side by using this accounting format. Word to the wise, though, for those who are presenting numbers to executives, try to stay away from cents unless your business comes down to showing cents. You want to show things often in the millions or thousands as opposed to ever showing decimal points. So you can use this decrease to automatically hide the decimal points. Percentage format. It's very important the order of things when you're using this percentage icon. So let's say I've got 100, 100, 1, and 1. Okay. So pay attention here. As I select these and click on the percentage icon, the one that was 100 now says 10,000%. And the one that was a 1 now says 100%. And that's because, obviously, 100% is equal to 1, right? But 10,000% being 100, it's not necessarily intuitive. So be careful when you use this. I'm going to highlight these two cells and format them first, and then I'm going to type 100 and 1 and see how these now have the 100% that this one did, and this has the 1%. And that's because I formatted the cell first and then I put in the value. The point here is just to be very conscious that this format icon is very powerful in that it actually divides your number by 100 as part of the formatting, which is unusual for formatting to actually modify your values in your cells. So that's unique. Keep an eye out for that. Be careful. There's going to be a great video about conditional formatting. I love conditional formatting. We're going to spend a lot of time here. There's a lot that you can do to take data and make it come alive. Allow the data to tell its story. So we're going to get to a whole video about that. In the short term, let me just put in a few numbers here and show you how this might work. I select here and just take something like color scales. So there's a lot that you can do to make your data stand out, and we'll go through that. Inserting shapes. Let's go to a new tab here. All kinds of shapes you can insert here. These can be very handy, especially as you're working with macros where you want to create a button to do something in your system. I use shapes quite a bit, and especially as I'm automating spreadsheets. We'll have multiple videos about how to use these shapes to your advantage and to help you help the data tell the story that it wants to tell. Inserting charts, you can do that here. Usually you start with the data and then click Insert Chart, and it gives you options that it thinks will make sense for you. Inserting a text box. A text box is basically just inserting a shape. It's kind of the same thing, but it's more generic. Then we get to word art. As with the font choice, not drawing attention to itself, you want to be careful with overdoing it. It's easy to overdo it with word art. Just be careful, tread lightly, be professional. These next three icons have to do with aligning objects. So if I select these objects here and then hit let's align left, they all align left. We can distribute them vertically. Let's say I take one and pull it way down here. I can distribute these vertically that way or horizontally that way. It spreads things out in a way that can be very handy when you're aligning different objects. Name Manager. We're going to spend a lot of time understanding how Name Manager should or should not be used. It's a very powerful way to manage variables, ranges, definitions in your spreadsheet. We're going to use it and learn how to make it so that when you copy your sheets to other workbooks, that it doesn't bring baggage with it. So we're going to learn about that. It's a place to be careful of because you can create links to other files that you didn't want to have happen. So we will go through several videos about Name Manager to learn the best ways to use it. When we build formulas, we'll get into how to work those formulas and analyze them and check their errors, all with these formula icons. The calculation icons, if your spreadsheet requires a lot of calculations, Excel can sometimes take a while to run through all those calculations. If it's taking a while and it's keeping you from being productive because it's making you pause as Excel is thinking, you can set this to manual and then come back and turn it back to automatic when you're ready, when you've finished what you needed to finish. If you have it set on manual, then this Calculate Now button is your way to tell Excel, no, go ahead and calculate. Let's go back to our other sheet here. And then when I select this, I'm going to click on Sort. Obviously, that's an alphabetical sorter. Filter is an auto filter. There's so much that is very helpful about this. If I said states over here, and then I said numbers, and then I said word numbers. If I select this row here, I can click auto filter, and this gives me a way to filter what I want to look at. Let's just look at Arkansas. And it filters for those rows of the data that was connected to this. So I'll talk with you about how best to use the auto filter with your data sets. It's an absolute must for data analysis. There are ways to make this be the most powerful data analytics tool that Excel has. These filters, when used correctly, will open up your world. We're going to spend a lot of time here. So let me copy this into a new sheet a few times here. If I paste this multiple times in here, and then I copy it over here, let me paste that there. If I want to remove duplicates, this is a great tool for that. I can click Remove Duplicates, and it just removed the duplicates. So that's how that works. Data validation allows you to limit what data gets put in. So let me give you an example. I'm going to say state and city. I'm going to say these are the states and these are the cities. So if I do data validation and make a list, the list for the state will be here, and then the list will do the same thing, data validation list for the city will be here. And I say okay, and now you can choose the state and you can choose the city. So it gives you a drop-down list that is limited to what you defined. So we'll work a lot with that. That's a very handy thing when you're creating forms or models that have options, but you want to limit the options. And also for data entry, where you want to make sure that the data that's going in meets certain criteria. List is the one I use most of the data validation. Goal Seek is a way to find answers. It's kind of like asking Excel to do calculus for you, where you don't know the answer, but you can set a couple of cells and have Excel try and see what fits. And if it goes too high, then it tries again, and it goes too low, it tries again, and it narrows down to a specific answer, which is a great way to reverse engineer different values in math. This whole section for comments, if I wanted to add a comment, I could click New Comment, start a conversation. Comments are a way to communicate with other people on your team, or even communicate with yourself in the future to remind yourself, hey, this was the list right here. This was the list of states. And then you could select here and say, this was the list of cities. Anybody who comes back through this, including yourself at some later point, can hover over this and see what these comments were. Or if you come in here and you say, I want to see the next comment, it takes you to the next comment, or the next comment after that, or the previous comment. You can delete the comment, or you can show the comments on the side. So that's what those comments icons are for. We already took a look at this, being able to view the grid lines, being able to show or hide the grid lines, the headings. The ruler one has to do with when you're doing printing or other settings like that we'll get to later. This is for a new window. You can use Alt-Tab to get to different windows that you have open on your computer. Using New Window allows you to have a different part of your spreadsheet open. So if I go to sheet 1 from sheet 6, since I open a new window, the next time I hit Alt-Tab, I can go back to this other window and toggle between these two sheets which is very handy. I can click this arrange icon to show in horizontal or vertical manner how these are aligned. And here they are next to each other. To get out of that, you can simply click there again. Freeze panes. If I scroll down here, as I'm scrolling down, I lose what was in row F up above. But if I select row 8 and hit freeze panes, then when I scroll, I keep my column header up there at the top, which is very handy. I use freeze panes all the time. Most of the time I use the cell freeze panes. So let me unfreeze the panes and now point out that I could have selected this column and then frozen the panes there. And now as I scroll to the right, the column on the left stays there. But the one that I use most, I'm going to unfreeze that. When you have a single cell selected versus having the whole column or the whole row selected, if you select just the single cell, when you click freeze panes, then when you scroll down or up, your headers at the top stay fixed. But then also when you scroll to the right or left, the columns on the left that you wanted to freeze there will stay there. So I use this all the time. Find the way to optimize any spreadsheet you have so that your panes are frozen in a way that makes best use of your column headers and your data. The Visual Basic and macros and record macro we will cover in separate videos, but this gives us a good way to see all our icons. So we've done the tour of the icons on the Rock Customized ribbon. Hopefully now you have a sense of what you've got available to you. Out of all the icons that were on these other ribbons, these that I've put on the Rock Customized ribbon are the ones I tend to use most and that I find the most value in having easily available. One other thing I want to point out is if you've got shapes, when you select a shape, the shape format ribbon automatically shows up and it draws the focus of your ribbon to this. So this gives you a full set of icons for modifying and working with your shape. That happens when you select an icon automatically. So you don't need to have the icons from this ribbon available in the Rock Customized ribbon because they automatically show up anytime you select one of those anyway. So that's it. We've done a survey of the Rock Customized ribbon icons. Next, we're going to look at columns, rows, and sheets. See you there.